This video is going to cover the topic of common multiples. Let's get our page set up with the date and topic. And of course, we need to make sure we have our margins as well. So let's put our date at the top, and our topic will be common multiples. The essential question for today will be, what are common multiples and how can we show common multiples of two or more numbers? To start this video, we need to remember the definition of multiple. So remember, a multiple is the product of a number with any other whole number. As an example, let's write down the first 5 multiples of the number 3. Go ahead and pause the video while you write them. How'd you do? Did you remember the 3? Sometimes people forget that 3 is a multiple of 3, but it is, right? 3 times 1, the whole number 1, is 3, so it is a multiple of 3. Today we're going to look at specifically common multiples. You might have a guess of what common multiples means already. Common multiples are multiples that 2 or more numbers share. You'll see here that I like to use a couple of different strategies to organize my thinking when I work with common multiples. As you're watching and as you're working with the common multiples, you might decide that you like one strategy more than the other, and that's fine, right? Choose what works best for you. Let's start by doing this with the multiples of 4 and 6. So I'm going to turn my page here to have a little more room. One way to show the common multiples of 4 and 6 would be by creating a couple lists. I'm going to write out a list of the first 10 multiples of 4. Please pause the video and make that list yourself as well. The first 10 multiples of 4. Ooh, I just barely fit them in there. So those are my first 10 multiples of 4. Right? Remember that you need to make sure that you have that 4 as your first multiple. Okay. Now let's make another list of the first 10 multiples of 6. I'm going to change colors here. I'm going to use blue this time. Pause the video again and make your list of the first 10 multiples of the number 6. Great. Okay, so if anyone's concerned on how we're finding these multiples, right, on the multiples of 6, I'm just adding 6 over and over again to each previous multiple, right? I did that 10 times. So 6 times 6 was 1. And if I add another 6, that's 12, because 12 is 6 times 2, right? And it goes on from there. As we look at the list now, are there any multiples that are appearing on both lists? Any multiples that both 4 and 6 share? Well, I see that 12 is on both lists. I also see that 24 is on both lists. And I also see 36 appearing as a multiple of both 4 and 6. There might be more, and there are, right, if I keep going, but I'm only going for the first 10 multiples. So I see here that they have common multiples of 12, 24, and 36. These are their first 3 common multiples. That's one way people like to show common multiples, by looking at 2 lists and comparing them simultaneously. But there's another strategy some people like to use. As we use this strategy, let's find the common multiples of 6 and 8. Right? And this time I'm going to put a cap on it. Let's find the common multiples they have up until the number 48. I'm going to use a Venn diagram to display my common multiples this time. I really like Venn diagrams. Venn diagrams, if you're kind of wondering what I mean, Venn diagrams are these organizers. You probably use them a lot in your language arts class or history work that you do. They're really great for showing similarities and differences, and that's what we're going to do here with our multiples. So I'm going to make a really nice big Venn diagram here. On one side of my Venn diagram, I'm going to write down the numbers that are only multiples of 6. I'm going to put a 6 here on this side. And on the other side, I'll use that space to write down any multiples that are just multiples of the number 8. And in the space where they overlap, this is where we're going to see our common multiples. I'll write CM for common multiples. Those are the numbers where they both share a multiple. So let me try this out. The 6 times 1 is 6. And that's a multiple of 6, but not 8. 6 times 2 is 12. 12 is not a multiple of 8. 6 times 3 is 18. Oh man, still not a multiple of 8. 6 times 4 is 24. 24 is a multiple of 8, right? And let me stop here and go back into some of my 8s, so make sure I'm on the right track. 8 times 1 was 8. 8 times 2 was 16. 8 times 3 is 24, and that's why it's in that shared space. If I do 8 times 4, I get 32, not a multiple of 6. If I do 8 times 5, I get 40. Okay. So there, so far, my first 5 multiples of 8, and I'm kind of going back and forth between 6s and 8s. You can do this in whatever order makes the most sense to you. I want to get all the way up until I see how many they share up to 48. If I go to 48, 8 times 6 makes 48, and since it's times 6, I know it's a multiple of 6 as well. I'm going to go ahead and put that in the shared spot. Did I miss any on my 6s? Well, we did 6 times 1, we did 6 times 2, 6 times 3, and 6 times 4. 6 times 5 is 30. 6 times 6 is 36. 6 times 7 is 42. And that gets us back to 6 times 8, which is 48 in the shared space. This is a nice visual method for showing common multiples that some people like to use. Now it's your turn. Choose whatever display works best for you. And here, let me just turn my page. Okay, so we're going to use 3 and 4, and you're going to use whatever display works best for you to show the first, let's just say the first 2 common multiples of 3 and 4. Right? So you might be making a list, or maybe you're going to show it on a Venn diagram. Pause the video and find the first 2 common multiples of 3 and 4. So what did you find? I see on my list here that 12 shows up on both. That's a common multiple. And I also see 24 shows up on both. That's a common multiple. You can see in my list I went a little further than I had to do. That's fine. That happens, right? We want to make sure we cover all our bases, and sometimes that means we go a little further to look for our answers. I'll just take a quick moment to turn this into a Venn diagram as well, just so we can compare it to those of you who did it as a Venn diagram. So here we can see in a Venn diagram, on one side I have the multiples of 3, on the other side I have the multiples of 4, and they share 12 and 24. Those are the first 2 common multiples of 3 and 4. So now, looking back at what our essential question was to start our video, we should have learned, first of all, what is a common multiple, right? And we've shown 2 different ways that we can display common multiples of 2 numbers. As always, make sure you leave any questions that you might have to ask for class in the left-hand margin, and feel free to stop and rewatch any parts of this that you need a little more clarification for.